I have stage 4 invasive endometriosis, but the path to getting there for me is 30 years of having chronic pain and being told that pain was in my head.
This is quite common for a lot of women.
Yes.
Although it's not spoken about a lot.
On average, it takes a woman 7 to 10 years to get a diagnosis for. Part of the reason for that is because it takes a very long time for women to be believed. Even today, doctors don't yet agree about why endometriosis happens. I remember being in recovery with my husband, and this doctor looked at me and he said, "I've been doing this for 30 years and I have never seen anything like that."
You can't imagine how much pain you were in for 25 years and then holding all those jobs.
I was worried if people knew the kind of level of pain I was dealing with, they wouldn't take me seriously. In some ways, I would say that kind of also really coloured the first half of my career. When you never say no, when the answer is every task is possible and no hours are too long, you're also paying a different kind of price.
So other than your health, what other prices did you pay? Amy, 3 kids in 4 years. And your first kid was when you were 40.
Yes, ma'am.
I have no kids. I have a Labradoodle, but I cannot imagine what that is even like to have kids that, late. My mom was 35 when she had me. My dad was 40. That was considered late in the 70s. Maybe not so late now, but you had huge, major corporate careers. I can't even fathom. Like, what is going on there?
I think it's sometimes we don't get to choose what happens and when it happens in life. But when doors open, you have to run through them.
And I know you always wanted kids.
Yeah.
When did you start trying?
So I have been with my husband for 25 years. We had 20 years of infertility challenges.
Wow.
And part of why that's such a crazy thing to say out loud is because when we finally found a doctor who was in a position to diagnose what the problem was, we realized it was something that was absolutely knowable and treatable, not curable, but that there was a path forward that had been not available to us for 2 decades and that had slowed down our ability to build the family that we wanted.
Yeah. So what did you think the problem was and what was it in the end?
So the spoiler alert is I have stage 4 invasive endometriosis. But the path to getting there for me is 30 years of having chronic pain and being told routinely and very enthusiastically that that pain was in my head. So there's a piece about this that is learning to listen to your body, learning to trust yourself, learning to believe your own pain and push for something better.
Wow. And isn't it, so were you living in Singapore then?
So over the last 25 years, I've lived in probably more than 10 countries, which may have led to kind of the delays in finding a diagnosis, but it's for no lack of trying.
And the solution, this doctor that finally gave you the truth was in which country?
In Thailand.
An emerging country.
Yes. And yet this doctor is someone who knew exactly what he was looking at and was able to say definitively, you need to be in surgery and this will change your life. And
oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was through that emergency excision surgery. I came out of that. I remember being in recovery with my husband and he looked at me and he said, "I've been doing this for 30 years and I have never seen anything like that." He said, "I don't even know how you were functioning as a human being, let alone."
Oh, wow.
And it was one of the most validating moments of my life.
Yeah.
Now, this is quite common for a lot of women.
Yes.
Although it's not spoken about a lot.
Yeah.
So maybe for those who don't understand the condition, can you deep dive into it?
Sure. So endometriosis is when the lining of your uterus, every month when you have your period, that lining is basically shed by your body. It's a natural process. It can be painful for some people, but part of the challenge is that even today, 2025, doctors don't yet agree about why endometriosis happens. But it's when the tissue from the lining of your uterus appears in places that it shouldn't be in your body. Originally, this was thought to be something that only affected specific, gynecological issues. But what current research is telling us is it's actually a whole body disease. And that was part of my experience of realizing that I had endometrial tissue lesions, tumors in places like my lungs, in places very far from where they would other be in relation to reproductive health. So it's a very insidious disease, but it's also a very common one. And it's one that on average takes a woman 7 to 10 years to get a diagnosis for.
Oh.
Yeah. And part of the reason for that is because it takes a very long time for women to be believed.
Oh my God.
Mic drop.
So everything we experience in the workplace, it just transfers everywhere, every other part of our lives.
Yeah.
That we are not believed. And so by the time you get this doctor in Thailand tell you like, well, here's the issue and I can fix it, you are how young?
Well, it was just before my 40th birthday.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I, at that point, had very much given up on the idea that I was going to be able to be a mother because of the journey that we'd been on. But, you know, as I said, sometimes life throws you curveballs and the answer is, you know, catch it and run. And when we knew it was possible, even though they were high risk, we leaned in and 3 babies in 4 years.
Wow.
And they're precious and they are a handful, but they're ours. And we fought hard for them.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad. I'm so happy, like beautiful kids. But I can't imagine what it took you to get there. And, you know, just, and then navigating, like I can't imagine how much pain you were in for 25 years and then holding all those jobs.
And
And,
you know, it's funny. I actually was in Singapore earlier this year and I had the opportunity to meet up with a former ExCo member of a company that I had worked for. And it was a wonderful conversation, kind of catching up on how life and careers had evolved. And this person had been a wonderful mentor for me and really opened doors and was a big supporter of me taking risks and, you know, kind of growing into the leader that I am today. And he said to me, I had no idea that you were dealing with that. And I said, well, I know because I never let anyone know that. And he's like, how's that possible? And I said, well, that's what women do every day.
yes.
You know, I think about this a lot when I think about this idea about authenticity and about bringing your whole self. Because there's a lot of places where for women that still doesn't feel safe. Certainly it's not limited to only women, but this idea that you can show all of yourself and somehow still be seen for your excellence and your authority and that vulnerability doesn't take away from that. I think that's definitely for me been a journey to accept because I certainly came from a place where I believed I had to have some degree of professional armor, I guess, to kind of keep that under wraps because I was worried if people knew the kind of level of pain I was dealing with, they wouldn't take me seriously.
Yeah, because what's going to happen is that every small mistake or missed thing becomes, oh, it's because Amy got X.
Yeah.
Right?
Easy for
And I mean, in some ways, I would say that kind of also really colored certainly the first half of my career because I looked at the path to success as being, I was going to outperform everybody. You know, the prove it again, but also I would take on every impossible task and I would prove it was possible because that's how I would demonstrate my value. And it's a version of look over here, don't look over here. But in doing that, I also paid a really dear price because when you give that much of yourself, when you never say no, when the answer is every task is possible and no hours are too long, you're also paying a different kind of price.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So other than your health, what other prices did you pay?
I think the health is probably the biggest one, but I would say my learning about that is interesting because it didn't happen automatically, even when I had kind of major kind of health crisis moments. So, you know, I had the experience of have emergency spine surgery, had to learn to walk again, had to do a very, very extensive amount of rehabilitation. And to this day, it's not well understood as to why that happened. I don't come from a family with a history of any, ortho kind of issues, any bone density issues. Interestingly, some of the new research suggests that endometriosis can be part of back issues. But again, we're only learning some of this now, so who knows if that was part of the reason why. But I realized, as an example, I had this very, very major surgery. I asked my doctor when I woke up, so tell me about like the recovery time, like how does this work? And he said to me, some people, Amy, just get up and walk right out. And other people, you know, it takes them a while. And me being the driven, ambitious person that I am,
it's like, I'm going to walk
I'm
right
like,
out.
well, I guess I'm walking right out. And not only did I walk right out, I walked right onto a plane for a business trip, armed with painkillers. And I thought to myself, you know, no one needs to know. And the stress that I put on my body, you know, and the thing about it that's so funny to me now as I look at it is whose voice was telling me that I must do this, that they were watching and that if I did not demonstrate, you know, this full throttled, you know, kind of go, that somehow I would be less than. And I think about that so much of I don't know where these voices come from. But
who's they?
Who's they, right? Who is this, you know, who is this they? But my goodness, shutting them off, it's a gift.
How do you shut them off?
I think you finally come to a place where you accept that you're enough. And boy, is it a journey getting there.
That's like a lifetime of work.
for women,
right?
Yeah.
With all the conditioning we've experienced and everything the workplace had told us. But I'm curious if you, with the knowledge you have now and confidence and going back, would you have stand up and then go on the business trip? Would that have a business impact or impact on your career?
Yeah. So at the time, I was running a pilot project that was my baby. And I knew that it was in places that weren't necessarily going to get a lot of love or attention from the organization. And so what I thought to myself is, if I don't do this thing, no one is going to pick up this slack. You know, these people that are depending on this opportunity won't get it because I'm not getting on a plane and bringing it to them.
Yeah.
And that's probably a false equivalency, because I don't actually believe the only way to do a thing is to kind of, you know, destroy yourself in the process.
Yeah.
But I think what's been interesting to me is seeing modern day success stories now, particularly of female entrepreneurs and founders. They're rewriting the rules in a big way about where they draw the line. And, you know, I look at this now when I see earlier career stage professionals. And initially I was thinking to myself, and some of them would say, oh, I don't do that, or I don't work those hours, or I thought to myself, wow, the audacity. You know, because growing up professionally, the answer was yes and. You know, the answer was not no. But now I look at this and I think, I wish someone had told me that I could say no. I wish someone had said to me, you don't have to make that sacrifice. And so now when I speak to people who are earlier in their career, and even mid-level career professionals, saying no as a whole sentence, saying no with your full chest, saying no and knowing that that is not the end of every opportunity that you are ever going to experience, it takes some courage to do that. But boy, does it change things for you.
But also knowing when to say no.
Fair. Yes. Can't say no to everything.
Caveat.
Yes, that's an important word.
So it has to be an intelligent no.
Yes.
When you're creating boundaries, and also knowing, like, I mean, like, generally speaking, did you believe, like, looking back in your entire careers that you had, that you were performing much better than the men? In just generally speaking.
I would consistently deliver more. But I think, so a very good friend of mine made this comment to me when I was on my first maternity leave, and I was asking her for advice because she had had children earlier than I had and had this experience. You know, give me some advice about how to go back in, you know, how to think about reentry. And she said to me, so you have a choice to make. She said, the thing that has made you successful is that you relentlessly over-deliver. She's like, it's what you're known for. But she said, when you have children, you may not be able to do that anymore. I mean, your version of 100% may still be somebody else's 120%. But the question she asked me was, what if you gave 90%? What if you gave 95? What if you gave yourself a 5% buffer to breathe? You know, to allow for the unknown of what it is to look after a newborn and have someone completely depend on you, right? Which is obviously not something that I had any experience with. And I remember thinking to myself, I couldn't possibly do that. You know, I only know, I don't idle very well. I only know, you know, the fastest gear possible. But one of the things that she also said to me, which has really stuck with me, I didn't really think about this when I thought about boundaries. But she said to me that setting a boundary is an act of self-love, but enforcing a boundary is an act of self-respect.
Well said.
And that really made me pause, because I realized, well, I might have said something to people like, you know, I won't do calls during these hours, or I'm going to try and reduce either meeting schedules, you know, early in the morning, or travel slightly less. I would still say yes. I was still making my calendar available. I was still staying on for that one last conversation or that one last thing. And so every time that I let people chip away at whatever boundary I had said was important to me, I was effectively telling them unintentionally that it didn't matter, that it wasn't as precious as it actually was to me.
Exactly.
And, you know, I had an executive that I worked with who said to me, if you want to become a mother, you need to be militant in your pursuit of that. And I remember I asked her, that's such an interesting choice of words. Why are those words? And she said to me, because there is never a right time. There is never the right context. And no matter when it is, how it is, why it is, it's always going to be an inconvenience to someone. So if you want to pursue it, you make the call, but you know that you will make trade-offs as a result of it. And the straddling of those two things is a really hard thing. Yeah.
Did you manage to do that?
Here's what I would say. I believe I'm now in a place, certainly more in the last 5 to 10 years, even before I had children, than the first 15 of my career, where I feel like I know myself well enough now that I know what trade-offs I'm willing to make, in a way that maybe I had to go through the experience of compromising or saying yes when I really wanted to say no, and living with what that actually meant, you know, the time commitment or the impact that it had on my body, or how it made me feel in terms of my value in an organization or in a relationship, and realizing that I don't have to put myself through that I have a choice of how I choose to engage.
Yeah.
You mentioned the boundaries, I think this is so interesting. I love what you said with the self-respecting.
Yeah.
You also mentioned you see now more and more female founders enforcing it and be very, very strict about their boundaries because they can, in a way. As founders, we are, your own
Answer
bosses.
to yourself.
Yeah, answer to yourself in a way. So especially when you're not venture funded and self-funded. But in the corporate context,
Yeah.
how can a woman now, having babies, like you said, it's easy said than done. And then you are 100% was someone's 120. Now you switch back to, let's say, 90. So the perceived expectation, 30%.
Yeah.
So now you actually prove the point that you are less because you had a baby. How do you convince then the organization?
Yeah.
Convince is actually the wrong word. How do you step back in and saying, I'm not even good enough. I'm
So, something interesting that I observed, not just for my own experience with motherhood, but as somebody who's now had the privilege of building and leading large teams and having women have their first children, kind of under my watch, for lack of a better word, or oversight in terms of the management structure. I think organizations make a mistake by focusing on only maternity cover planning. What they don't do is talk about the reentry plan. The investment that pulls you back in and says, we want you back here.
Yeah.
We see the value that's going to be on hold for whatever period of time.
Yeah.
And we're investing with you in how we're going to shape your re-entry so that launch, is not set up to fail, but actually set up to be successful over whatever period of time.
Yeah.
And I look at that and I think if more organizations invested in that way of thinking and then put policy and effort behind that, you'd see more mothers return, more mothers have a successful re-entry, more mothers return to productivity faster, but also some of the challenges that you deal with that are physical, some of the mental health challenges that can come with having a newborn, in whatever iteration of how you experience that, you would have a different type of support network set up around you so that you could be the multi-hyphenate that perhaps you desire to be. Because mother isn't the only title a lot of women want to carry. I know I'm part of that category.
So the reality of having 3 kids in 4 years, right? And you were traveling how many days a year on average?
Well over 300.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like logistically, how does that work?
Well, in 2 ways. When we finally knew that we would be able to have children and I was able to carry successfully, my husband made an amazing choice, which was that he would be the primary caregiver so I could continue to pursue my career. He is a very successful professional musician. He's a wonderful artist and creative human being. And he said, I've been doing this for decades. I've been pouring myself into my music and to my fans, and I want to do this now for my family. And I initially wasn't sure if he really meant it. And it's been the most amazing gift that he's given me. I could not do this if he was not doing that. But some of the other fun logistics, I have had to learn the fine art of how to manage breast milk.
Yes.
On the road, across time zones, across, many, many different laws and policies around how it can be stored, shipped, flown.
Oh my gosh, like you were saying, like it depends on which flight, from which city to which city?
Yes.
Even?
There are literally different rules between airline carriers. There are different rules between cities in the same country, certainly between countries. And it's somewhat laughable. It's a different version of these things haven't necessarily caught up with the reality of modern day motherhood.
Yeah.
Multiple airlines would confirm to me that they were very pro mothers being able to nurse and obviously look after their children. So they said there was no problem to have breast milk on planes as long as I could produce the child that the breast milk was for, which suggests that they don't understand why I would be pumping in the first place. There's a gap that we have to keep bridging. So.
Yeah. Crazy. Oh my gosh. Like I can't even imagine how you had to do all that. And again, nobody knows that you're doing this.
So I would correct that statement.
Okay.
I didn't have to do it. I got to do it.
Okay.
And I think this is the thing I would also say, and I want to say this really clearly because mothers carry so much guilt and baggage around this. However you choose to feed your child, your choice, whatever works, works. For me, I felt such an incredible privilege to be able to nourish my children from my body.
Yeah.
And as an older mother, it meant I really had to work at it. But one of the ways, to be honest, I dealt with a version of my, first iteration of mother's guilt, being away from my children when they were so young, is I believed if I was doing this, it was me giving them the very best that I had to offer, even if I couldn't be there with them. And, maybe that's a too loaded a statement to make, but it's part of how I rationalized missing a lot of things, like first steps and first words, and, the belief that if I was providing for the family in this way, not just in terms of my motherhood, but, the professional role that I was playing, that it would make that absence okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so this is really raw conversation. I love this, what you're saying, because what you said was the woman and guilt not producing milk. Because one of the easiest way would just be, okay, let's use the formula.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I had my first child, I was doing the job and then studying at the same time, and then the milk wouldn't come.
Yeah.
Because I was so stressed. And then I have various voice telling me, it's still the best for the child. And then other voice also saying, if you're so stressed, the milk is stressed. So, which is true actually. And so the kid actually does not get the best. So I was pumping like for 50 minutes at that time. The devices were not that advanced yet. So 50 minutes, and there's, oh my God, 120 ml for 35 minutes for what? And then there was various moments that, okay, not just, come on.
Yeah.
But you kept doing this for all three children.
Yeah. For my first two for 18 months, and my third is coming up on 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a labor of love. I mean, it's the most immediate example I can give you that two uncomfortable truths can be true at the same time. That something can be beautiful and it can be absolutely brutal and exhausting.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways I would say holding those truths for motherhood also helped me hold uncomfortable truths, in a corporate setting as well, that I don't think I had that kind of dichotomy exist in such a tangible way for me before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there actually any moment, especially having the desire to have children for such a long time and then were not able to do it, finally 40 you were able to do it and you were on peak of your career as well.
Yeah.
In a way, you actually had everything. Were there any moment after the first one or the second one you thought, actually it's enough?
Yeah.
Should I still pursue anything? I can just step back as well a bit.
So I remember having a conversation with someone before my first child came into this world, and I said to them, I don't know what I'm going to do on maternity leave. I'm sure I'm going to get bored and I'm going to want to get back to work immediately. And obviously, it's a folly of a thing to say because you don't realize how incredibly intensely you are needed. The physicality of early motherhood in particular is just really brutal. I don't think I thought about it in the context of, one and done. And some of that is also, I guess, I come from, my immediate family is very small, but my extended family is very large. My mother is one of 8. My father is one of 5. On my husband's side, his mum and dad are one of 8 and 10 respectively.
Wow.
And so, I didn't grow up with that extended childhood experience of having all of those family members around me for a bunch of different reasons. But I always believed that I wanted to have a family. You have that vision of there will be multiple children around the table. There will be, and that they will be each other's best friends in the same way that you want to obviously, have a relationship with them. And it's one of the most rewarding things, even at this very, very young age, seeing them play with each other, seeing them take care of each other. My eldest is a son and he's so protective of his sisters, and it's a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you wanted that table to be filled up.
Yeah.
But have you ever thought about to just professionally?
I will tell you that there wasn't a day of any of that experience where the professional impact of it didn't cross my mind. I shared this with people that I worked with, women on my team who came to me privately and asked me, I want to have kids, but I don't know if I should. I don't know when I should. I think the truth is that there's never a good time. There's never a convenient time. There's never it will slow down then. There will always be some kind of a curveball. And for me, one of the hard things to kind of grapple with is when I was growing up professionally in my 20s and my 30s, not only was I dealing with the things I was dealing with that I shared in terms of my own personal health challenges, but I never saw motherhood on display. did not work under women in leadership. I saw a role model of leadership that was predominantly male and stereotypically male, so very aggressive, very type A personality. I didn't see room for different ways to lead. But I also observed on multiple occasions that effectively when a woman at any level of her, kind of career shared that she was expecting that was somewhat the end of her career progression.
Yep.
Intentionally or unintentionally, the exclusion from the email thread or the not invited to the meeting because the context of that project is in 6 months or,
Yes.
whatever the thing might be. And I observed that, and I honestly believed before I had children that if I were to have them before I had reached a point in my career where I felt I demonstrated the caliber of leader, the competence technically within my craft, that I would not be able to regain that ground.
Yeah.
I really did believe that would not be available to me. And I'm very fortunate that wasn't my truth, that I was hired by someone who didn't look at my pregnancy like it was,
An issue.
a problem to be solved. But having said that, I know that is not true for a lot of women.
Yeah.
I know women, I've had women that I mentor ask me, I'm very early in my pregnancy. Should I disclose it?
Yeah.
I don't know if I should apply for this job. And, because I am expecting this to be the trajectory of my life. And in all ways, you want to obviously congratulate women and you want to celebrate their story. But my truth, because I had incredibly high-risk pregnancies, I didn't do pregnancy announcements. I didn't share news with people early because my experience was that they weren't real until they were in my arms. And so that it's a different kind of journey because it doesn't necessarily have the same levity, I guess, that other people might experience. But what I have said to people is that this news is yours and yours alone. The context of how you share it, the timing of it, the way that you do it, it shouldn't be an apology.
Yeah.
You're not an inconvenience to people. You're doing something that is brave and needed. If you think about bringing the next generation into the world, women are uniquely qualified to do this and can only play that role.
Yeah.
So I look at this and I think,
That's such a hard place to get to, though, for women. I mean, I had one of my directors when I was in tech call me up and say, like, Uma, I am so sorry, but I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
And then I was like, firstly, congratulations.
I guess I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, are you, did you want to be yes, oh yes, we really wanted this. I was like, okay, great, congratulations. Let's take a moment. Because I wasn't even sure.
Should I be happy for you?
Yes. But it's so hard, I think, for women to feel like, because, you already enter workplaces that are, and then if you're in male-dominated industries like we were, all three of us, we already feel grateful to be there. And then now, how can you not feel inconvenience?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like, it's hard.
It's really hard. And, maybe I've had three rounds of this, so I've had a chance to maybe get a little bit better than I was the first time round. But, the honest truth for me is I really didn't disengage the way that I counsel people to now when I was on mat leave, because I honestly didn't give myself permission to not continue to be present, to demonstrate my commitment and my investment. I was still responding to emails. I was still taking calls with people. I believed that I had to show that they were waiting for a reason, that it would be worth the wait, that, I was going to deliver that value. And, here were small reminders of that.
Yes.
And I look at that again and I think to myself, who's the they that was in my ear telling me I had to do that?
Yeah.
And yet that's very much how I know. And it's interesting because a lot of young women now obviously delay this experience because they are pursuing the corporate track or, whatever success that they're chasing. And I don't have, as someone who is considered, I hate this term, a geriatric pregnancy, geriatric mother, I look at the fact that being older as a mother was actually a gift to me because at that point, to your point, while certainly the work is never done, I had done some work.
Yeah.
I had grappled and really wrestled with some things about myself that I think allowed me to actually be a calmer mother. It allowed me maybe to extend a little bit more grace to myself.
Yeah.
And it's something that I now take as a really precious, I guess, burden / responsibility when I know people within my community are investing time to make sure that the mother knows not only are you going to meet an entirely new person when you bring the baby home, you're also going to meet an entirely new person in yourself.
Yeah.
And I think so much of the experience after delivery is about the baby, which is amazing, but we forget about the mother. And I think that for me, being able to be someone to speak encouragement, to give people permission to be angry maybe, or to
Yes.
feel, upset and or misunderstood. I think so much of that to the point of holding two truths that are uncomfortable at the same time. You can love the fact that you're a mother
Yeah.
and at the same time really miss the life that you had before.
Yeah.
You can love being a mother and be wildly ambitious.
Yeah.
I know that has been my truth.
Yeah.
Motherhood didn't make me less ambitious. If
Yes.
anything, it made me more, because I came out of that experience, one, thinking, I want to make my children proud. I want to do things that really matter in a world that they're going to grow up in a way that means the time that I am away from them is worthwhile.
Yeah.
It's meaningful. And that, that doesn't mean that we only do things in the spirit of, giving back or for the community, but that the work that I do should be advancing whatever space that I'm in.
Yeah.
And I look at that as such a privilege, but also children give you such a sense of urgency and clarity. They make you laser focused because, by golly, that time comes around and they are relentless in their pursuit of you. They just want your presence. They want your undivided attention.
Yeah.
And so, you get whatever many hours you get, but it means that you have to be the person who is running, who is focused, who is, all in. And then for whatever period of time, you're out and then you get to dive back in again. And being in organizations that I think can create that kind of space and can give you that kind of flexibility, it's still an interesting, not always common experience.
Yeah. Don't you think even less and less common?
It's hard because I think COVID changed some of that, and in some ways for the better. But then the kind of the re-entry and the very aggressive return to office stance that a lot of places have now actually means that not just mothers, but women who are, predominantly women who are in caregiving roles. And sometimes they're referred to as the sandwich generation. You have your older parents and you have younger children and you have a career. You're kind of caught in between a rock and a hard place because you're trying to be all things to all people. And the truth is you can't split yourself that way and still be somehow whole. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I'm just thinking about what you said, fully with the children and then fully with your job, make you, so clear about your boundaries. I think that's very idealistic. The reality for most of women is they are neither with the children nor with their job. Now with some young mother or when they become mother and then didn't have a, let's say, re-entry plan from the company, and they feel that they're also in the mat leave, but they still feel that they have to, the day exists in their head as well. Yeah. Do you have any practical tips or practical tools to say, okay, if you are neither here nor there, nobody's winning.
Yes.
So how can we reframe, or what can I do? Or can I tell the company that these are my boundaries and respect that as well? What are some practical tools?
I think to a point that Uma made earlier, even if you want to set boundaries, I think a lot of women, irrespective of how senior or junior they are in an organizational structure, often don't feel that they can do that, particularly when they're in that re-entry period, because they feel that they're under heightened scrutiny or heightened, kind of analysis of what their impact is. So I think what I have experienced, you have to make a choice about how you engage and where you give your energy and attention when, and you have to keep honoring it. And honestly, sometimes that choice is one decision at a time.
Yeah.
And it's a really hard truth to live with because I know, for example, I say this as a really simple example, even though my husband is the primary caregiver, every time there was anything related to my children, I am the phone call.
Yes.
No matter where I am in the world, what time zone I'm working in, whether I'm in the middle of a board presentation or not, I'm the person who will get the phone call. And no matter how many times we have a conversation, with the school to say, this is our arrangement. This is your, you have your primary contact number 1, primary contact number 2.
Yeah.
That was not how this was ever experienced by us.
Yeah.
So it's something that I feel that you honestly do have to wrestle with, on a daily basis. But I also think that having to make choices, hard intentional choices, also it comes back to that forcing you to be focused.
Yeah.
I remember thinking to myself when I returned from mat leave the first time, I used to I used to agonize over the perfection of my presentations. Remember the days when they were version 40 or version 59, not kind of live collaborative docs, but like when we had to save and repeat.
Yes.
And, it was the minutia of, is that all fully justified to the right? If we got all the colors right, let's wordsmith that particular whatever. And you could have days, weeks to get something just where it needed to be. And then suddenly it was like, actually now you have 4 hours. Get that done.
Yeah.
This is what we got, so let's do it.
Yeah.
And that urgency and intensity forces you to be creative, to find an intellect that maybe you didn't even know you had. I can work out that particular mathematical equation in a way that I didn't know I could do, But you discover these things about yourself. It's somewhat as a sense of, it's the necessity of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So also the comfort in imperfection as well.
Oh, it's so hard.
And that's so hard for women.
I would describe myself as a recovering perfectionist. And I don't say that to be facetious, but I think I will always describe myself as a recovering perfectionist because I now at least have enough self-awareness to know that this is a deeply embedded trait in me.
Yeah.
From a really young age, I was somebody who was always really driven to excellence. And that showed up for me academically, it showed up for me athletically, and when I came of age, it showed up for me professionally. And learning how to let go of that. There are still days where I catch myself and I realize you're doing it again. But even being able to own that and say it tongue in cheek to people who worked with me and say, if you see me doing this, let me know, because that isn't the best use of my time and energy. And it's also, perfectionism robs other people that work with you of a chance to step up.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, oh God, that's so hard though. Yeah. I am a total perfectionist like you are. And it's really hard to, yes, you will delegate, but at the end of the day, if the buck stops at you and you are the one who's going to put that deck and say this set of words.
Your reputation's on the line.
You might say to your team, great job. And then you go and fix it all. Right?
I try really hard not to do double work. And I think one of the lessons that I've had, if I think kind of collectively about high-performing cultures and companies, particularly in a time when I think a lot of people have fear about their job security and fear about how to demonstrate performance in a culture that suggests everybody is outstanding all the time. I think that honestly, if you know what you are responsible for delivering, what you own personally, collectively, but individually, what do you own? If you know how you are tracking against that thing, you have real, honest, regular conversations with whoever your line manager is about how that thing is going, whatever it is, and you love what you do, you don't spend time worrying about your job.
Yes, I like this one because I give it in another way, but very similar to what you're saying, because I think in every role, you should think about like 2, maximum 3, because you can't get to more than that. At the end of the year, what does success look like in the role and the scope that I am given to do? Right? And then you sit down with your manager, and then every quarter you got to just check it's still the case.
Are we doing? Is this
sometimes
still the goal?
It might change, but
are we still on track for this?
Because beneath those 2 or 3 things is 100 different action items.
100%. Yeah.
So that's how I learned how to, this is not urgent, not important. This is important, not urgent. Urgent and important.
Yeah.
And if it's not important buckets, like that, those are the things to let go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely have seen people really get caught up in the concept that, it's about doing. It's about the, kind of being busy, demonstrating that I'm doing a lot of things, but not really understanding where the substance lies. And that for me comes back to this idea that if performance comes as a surprise to you, whether it's good or it's, it's not, like that's a failing on both parts.
Exactly.
Managers aren't mind readers, it shouldn't be a surprise. But if you own the idea that you are in the driver's seat of your own career, of your ambition, of how you articulate it, of how it shows up, of how you show up every day, irrespective of whether you are, new to a career or you are, in the echelons of power, like that piece of it means that you have to have the conversations. You have to ask, you have to seek the feedback, and then you have to be willing to own it. I remember being asked a question in an interview process where someone said to me, can you give an example of vulnerable leadership? And I said, hard lessons learned. But I said to them, something that was modeled to me that gave me the courage to do this. I had a manager who was a C-suite level executive who, after the formal performance review, published her performance review for her team.
Yeah.
Made it completely accessible and open in all of its detail. And I remember thinking to myself when I saw this for the first time, wow, if that person can do this, why on earth can I not do that? How is whatever feedback I am getting so special or precious or potentially damaging to me that I couldn't just be open with the fact that everybody has stuff they're working on and everybody has areas they excel.
Yeah.
And it was such a powerful thing for people to see that the first time when I did it, particularly in the context of Asia, because it's not common. One does not show one's flaws.
Yes.
But being able to do that, one, it freed me up to own things. And then to be able to say to people, those 3 things that I'm working on, if you catch me doing that, tell me. I'm so grateful that you pointed that out to me, so let's work on it together. But it also allowed me to having real conversations about performance, especially when someone was struggling, not like a career death sentence. And I think that really changed the way a lot of people thought about the fact that you go through peaks and kind of ebbs and flows, I guess, in your career, in your knocking it out of the park, potentially stepping up into a new level or a new role, having to learn things again, and potentially getting back to knocking it out of the park. But we don't all start with that all the time, every day, in every capacity we're in.
Yeah. So the person who showed the performance, was it a woman?
Yes.
Do you think a man would do that?
I don't know.
Yeah. Me too. I think it's a no.
But
I'm just
I
thinking about
will
all
say
the
this.
men I know.
I think this is the thing, though, for me, is I only got, and comfortable is not even the right word, because there are still elements of modeling vulnerability in leadership that I find deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm a really private person. This conversation might suggest otherwise, because I'm talking about things that I have not talked about before. But being in a position where you see somebody else saying the things, showing the things, demonstrating excellence, while also showing that they're flawed, that they're human, that they can demonstrate empathy and not somehow be less excellent, it really challenges you to think about why you hold those lines as somehow being less professional or less personifications of leadership.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things we talk about is like, how do you transition from doer to leader for a woman? So what are your top tips around that?
My overarching statement is, what got you here will not get you there. One of the hard lessons that I had, and this came through a performance review, so I give this as a live example. One of the things that I think had been like a really defining attribute of mine in my earlier career that had kind of seen me rise and rise quickly was I was somebody who got stuff done. I got a lot of stuff done. I got it done at a very high quality. I didn't say no. I did the impossible. But also, I was somebody who found a way to kind of make the thing happen, right? And so, I look at this and I think to myself, okay, now what I want to understand is I was always seen as being decisive, being, somebody who was like very quick to kind of see the problem, act, let's go. And that worked really well for me. But once I moved into a position of leadership, I had to stop being the person who did all the action. And in some cases, it wasn't always my decision. Now, you're right, the buck stops with you, but you had to be in a position where if you weren't actually helping other people learn how to make these decisions, they were never going to be able to step up and be delegated to the way that you needed if you're operating at scale. And I had a piece of feedback that said, when you jump in, when you're listening to the problem and in your, and the wheels are turning and you're like, I see this, this is what we got to do, like bam, 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 bam. She said, do you know that that's depriving me of the ability to learn and grow? And wow. Like I felt winded, to be honest. It took my breath away. But I thought, firstly, what courage to say it like that.
Yes.
Right? So I applaud the person who gave me this feedback. I was so grateful for it because I never would have assumed that's how it was being experienced.
You gave a safe space as well, I would say. I wouldn't dare that to say to my previous boss.
But I look at that and I think...
Maybe after a few drinks.
I look at that and I think, though, by saying that to me, it helped me understand... I had to lead differently than what I thought was my role, what had defined my impact and my success.
I think this person really cared about you.
Yeah.
Because I think the people who work for you, like I've had a few of them, the ones who really put a mirror to your face, like it tells you how much they care about you.
Yes.
They want what's best for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the truth, particularly about hard feedback, is people don't give it if they don't care.
Yeah.
True.
Sometimes the
Well,
delivery needs work,
yeah,
but
I think in the intent of the feedback. So firstly,
Fair.
what is the feedback? Because I think women tend to get feedback on style a lot, right?
Yes.
Oh, you didn't speak enough. You spoke too much.
Yeah.
Too feminine.
loud,
Too masculine.
yes.
Right?
Aggressive.
It's style.
Executive presence.
Yeah. Exactly. So so sometimes feedback for women are not useful. Like men get feedback on skill, right? Like, so I think depends on the feedback. If the feedback is justified, is objective, is actionable, then yes, it's
Yeah.
all good.
Yeah. If it's something you can actually apply.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember people coming to me when they had performance reviews in companies that were introducing new models of performance reviews or new ways of having conversations or documenting these things. There's been so many iterations over the decades, right?
Yeah.
And what does this mean? What am I supposed to do with this? How do I?
Yeah.
I remember someone literally was given performance feedback. This is a while ago now, but to smile more, and kind of
It's quite common.
to what end?
You look so angry when you don't smile.
Yes. What kind of smile would you like?
If I could provide a menu, I know. Well, I'm very effusive, so that was never my problem. So.
No, but I think women will
Yes.
ask that.
Yeah.
They'd
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, so when should I smile?
Yeah.
What kind of smile?
Yeah,
Is it
exactly.
like this?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. How would you?
And it's so loaded though, because there's a version to your earlier point of too much or too little.
Yeah.
Not enough or
Yeah. So if a woman hears feedback about her style, what should she do? So like, you should smile more.
Yeah.
Amy, you should smile more.
I would politely reject that statement, but I think I'm also at a place in my career itself where I feel
can.
I can.
Or who dare to say that to you?
You're right.
Think like 15 years, 20 years ago.
20 years ago. Look, I think one of the things I have learnt that I don't necessarily take feedback from people who have not walked a path that I am on.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't mean that I am dismissive or disrespectful, but I think you always have to weigh, to your point about intention, but also about lived experience.
Yeah.
I remember some of these things are particularly, kind of gendered experiences, but so many younger women get so many things kind of thrown in their path as they are, demonstrating their excellence, as they're, perfecting their craft, as they are seeking for more visibility, as they're looking for exposure, as they're saying yes to whatever the experience is so they can get, into that opportunity, however that door gets opened. And feedback that is not actually practical, that is not holding someone accountable for excellence is incredibly unhelpful.
Yeah.
And so for me on that, I look at it and I say, how can we be in a position where we equip women to understand what they can let go of and what they should dig into?
Yeah.
So one of them, I guess, is not taking advice from people or taking feedback from people that you wouldn't otherwise go to, for that kind of advice or feedback in general. But I also think talking to trusted peers, trusted counsel. I know you talk about your circle. Sometimes it is other women who may be at the same level as you, or being able to go to a safe space and say, I've got this. What do you think I should do with it?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't know. And the intention is not, to shut the thing down, but it is to say, what can I realistically do with this? Can I let it go? Can I move on? Can I,
Yeah. So if there's anyone out there listening to this podcast right now, and you hear from your manager, like you should smile more, or anything else that is related to style, like always take it back to the objectives that you are meant to deliver. Like, help me understand, because you don't want to be the difficult woman,
What to say?
right?
Yeah.
help me
Go
understand
like,
is such a powerful
what do you
phrase.
mean I should smile more?
Yeah.
Do not say that,
Yeah.
because then you're too emotional.
Or aggressive, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Challenge
help
authority.
me understand
Yeah.
how this links back to what we agreed I should
Excellent.
be delivering in this
Yes.
role.
Yeah.
So
Right,
powerful,
so,
this
yeah.
one. Yeah. Maybe in terms of ambition,
Yes.
you said the children didn't stop me in terms of ambition. But if I look at you, from outside, at so many roles, some of the biggest roles have done, and then now with the 3 children, so accomplished. And then when we had this conversation a while ago, you said, I believe the best is still ahead of me.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that?
I don't like to think that the greatest thing I've done has already been done. And part of that, I guess, is that kind of that drive in me that fire in the belly that says, I want to have meaningful impact at scale. You know, I want to do things that in some small way will make the world a better place. And not in a way that is intangible, but a way that is something I can point to and say, I know that I'm moving the needle forward in a specific way. I look at how much need there is in the world, whether it's in the corporate sector or, you know, it's in terms of kind of community need. And I think to myself, who am I to suggest that what I've done is as good as it gets? You know, who am I to think that I can't do more or be more, show up more? You know, and it doesn't necessarily about saying more or, you know, attaining more. It's about knowing that the energy that you're investing can make a difference. So I think a lot, you know, there's this amazing quote by Emerson where he says, to know that even one life has breathed easier, you know, that is to have had success. And, you know, initially I think you might hear that and think, oh, that's a really warm, lovely, fuzzy thing. But a life breathing easier can be so many things. You know, I think about the incredible privilege and responsibility of being a people manager. You know, the words that you choose, the actions that you take can change the trajectory of someone's career and their life. You know, I think about this when I think about mentees for me. You know, there are women that I've been involved in their lives for 20 years, and I am so proud of where they are. And where they are is all them, right? I'm playing the tiniest of roles. But what a privilege to be able to cheer the rise and rise and rise of these women as they discover themselves and they find their voices and they figure out, you know, the questions. Even when they fall, they get back up again, right? So that's what the best is yet to come means to me. And I believe it really sincerely, because the day we sit back and think we're good is the day I think that you stop believing that you can be the change that is needed.
I'm thinking of a tagline for us. We help women breathe easier. Oh my gosh. Okay. Offline. What she said. Thank you, Amy. I have known you for 9+ years. Next year will be 10.
It will.
And I remember meeting you in 2016. And I was like, who is this woman who speaks 9 languages? And Asian languages. And I have been in awe ever since. I am so immensely grateful that it turned into a friendship that lasts till today. Thank you that, you know, my work wife got to meet you too. And you are a founding member for the Elevate group. And we are extremely privileged to have this conversation with you. Thank you for sharing so much today that you've not shared before.
If even one person hears this and it helps, it's worth it.
We guarantee it. Thank you.
Hi, I am Jingjin.
And I'm Uma. You are listening to Founding Voices, conversations that power the Elevate group, a special podcast series featuring the incredible women who helped bring this community to life.
Each founding member brings a bold voice, a powerful story, and a perspective we all need to hear.
These aren't just interviews. They are raw, real conversations about what matters most to them.
From health to leadership to legacy, we go deep. And we promise you will walk away with insight, inspiration, and something worth sharing.